There's a common saying that goes like this: truth is often stranger than fiction. And in this video, I want to give a basic mindset or philosophy or an attitude for an individual to research a topic or an idea in order to verify it within your spirit. It is prudent to question or verify every idea or theory, even if it seems absurd or insignificant. Many of our common sayings, you might be surprised, come from the Bible. But even the idea in Acts 17 verse 11, Paul encouraged people who happened to listen to him. He encouraged them not to blindly believe him. He encouraged them to search the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. And then he wrote in another place, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 21, he said, "Prove all things, hold fast that which is good." So the writers of the Bible and God himself doesn't expect you and I to just blindly believe something that we do not have evidence or to the idea. In Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, it says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." So proper faith or a proper belief has some evidence and or substance that will help a person draw the conclusion, okay, I believe that, and here's why I believe it. You might discover that the Bible is not a religious book per se, but it is a book of knowledge. It's about life. And the Bible encourages one to be prudent. Prudent rhymes with student. Many English words will have similar definitions. Now, there's a fellow years ago who was known historically and biblically to be a very wise king. Solomon was his name, and he coined several proverbs. And a proverb is a short, pithy statement of fact or truth. And he wrote in Proverbs 13 verse 16, he said, "Every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly." In Proverbs 14 verse 8, he said, "The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit." So that is our motive of studying things. And in Proverbs 14:15, he said, "The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going." Another proverb says, "The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge." And then in 15:5 he writes, "A fool despiseth his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent." Okay, and that one there is basically, you may not like the method of the idea that a person will proclaim, maybe crude, rude, or downright insulting, but yet you still consider the words. Proverbs 16:21, he said, "The wise in heart shall be called prudent, and the sweetness of the lips increaseth learning." Now, one can use your five senses to evaluate evidence and substance from first-hand knowledge in order to draw a conclusion and or to believe in something. For example, if you're walking in the woods, in a forest, and you came across and you saw a watch that was sitting in the weeds or by a tree, okay, so the evidence that you have in front of it, you see the watch. You probably picked it up, so you touched the watch. Okay, and so what can you draw a conclusion when you saw that watch? Well, obviously there had to be a designer. There had to be a creator. There had to be an owner. Now, the designer, the creator, the owner could be one and the same, or it can be three separate people. But obviously it didn't evolved through billions and billions of years from a gray mush or an amoeba to be a watch lying in a forest. Now, you don't see the designer, you don't see the evidence of a creator, and you may not see the owner. Unless he happens to quickly run up and say, I dropped my watch here. Okay, then you saw the owner, but you still didn't see the designer or the creator. So the evidence in front of you shows, well, you can have a logical faith or conclusion or belief that there was a designer, that there was a creator, and there was an owner from the evidence. And so that's the idea of looking at the evidence and trying to research a topic or idea. Now, there's a fellow years ago, I think he was a famous atheist, Friedrich Nietzsche. He made a statement, sometimes people do not want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Now, obviously, he probably would apply that to Christians, believers, but I would apply it to him also. Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while, and a broken watch is right twice a day. Okay, so the idea here is, do you question some of the things you believe, or will you verify them? Okay, if you are a Catholic, will you question or consider the idea of infant baptism? You mean to tell me H2O might get me into heaven? Or any of the sacraments, do you try to verify them? If you're an evolutionist, will you verify the evolutionary theory? If adamant evolutionists question the science textbooks like they do the Bible, they will quickly notice bigotry and the discrepancies within the science community. Now, I use the word science community loosely because 1 Timothy 6 verse 20 says, beware of science falsely so called. You only find that in one Bible in English, and that's the King James Bible. And the idea is that the evolutionary theory is not scientific. Nobody witnessed the Big Bang years ago, or the scientific term Maximus Bangus. Nobody witnessed that. And you can demonstrate that when there's an explosion, it doesn't put things in order. So it is a non-scientific theory, a bad theory, and actually a mentally deranged theory. Okay, if you're a Hindu, will you try to question or consider reincarnation? As a Mormon, will you question the ideas of Joe Smith and Brigham Young? As a Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Pentecostal, will you question or attempt to verify some of the ideas that are put in front of you? Okay, as a Calvinist, will you question the private interpretation of what you think is predestination and election? As a Muslim, if somebody would happen to say to you that I think your faith is a violent faith, and then if you react violently, you will just verify their thought. There's a fellow years ago by the name of Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher in the 1800s, and he made these statements. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Now, I might add the third statement. I'm going to break that up in three different parts. I might add it in this fashion. It is ridiculed, but could be ignored. So some people might ridicule it, but some people just flat ignore it. Okay, it is violently opposed, I agree, but it could be arrogantly opposed. You know, insults where they don't physically violently, arrogantly opposed. Now, the third one, he said it is accepted as self-evident. That would be the final conclusion. But what precedes that final conclusion? I would say first part of that, there's three steps to that within one's heart, is that sincere people will begin to quietly wonder. Now, this is illustrated by a fellow named Nicodemus in the Bible. In the Gospel according to John chapter 3, there's a fellow named Nicodemus. He was a part of the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees ridiculed Jesus Christ and violently opposed him, even to the point of crucifixion. Now, that was his gang. He was in that group. Okay, so here he saw the ridicule and he witnessed the violent opposition, but then within his heart, first thing is that he began to quietly wonder. And that reveals his sincerity. John chapter 3 verse 1, there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. The same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God. Okay, so why did he come at nighttime? Because he didn't want to see the ridiculers or the men who were attempting violence to see him. He was quietly wondering, and he came to Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, personally, and asked some questions. In John 7, verse 50, the second aspect of this being self-evident is sincere people will begin to personally consider the idea. In John chapter 7, again, these Pharisees, these guys who had intentions of murdering Jesus Christ, had some soldiers that they were forcing their will upon Jesus Christ, trying to bring him into custody. And Nicodemus saw the unscriptural means of that, and he saith unto them, John 7:50, Nicodemus saith unto them, he that came to Jesus by night, being one of them, doth our law judge any man before it hear him and know what he doeth? Well, the answer is, obviously you have to hear him. You got to give him a hearing. They didn't answer the question. And this tells us another idea, that it is practically impossible to get someone to understand an idea when their livelihood depends upon them not understanding. And that would be the Pharisees of the day. Now in John 19, this would be the completion of the third stage that Arthur Schopenhauer stated. Third is accepted as being self-evident. Nicodemus in John 19:39, I would say sincere people research and accept the idea as self-evident. In John 19:38, there's a rich fellow named Joseph of Arimathea. He wanted to get the body of Jesus down off the cross, and he went and consulted with Pilate, and he got the permission. He took the body down, and he's going to put it in the garden tomb, which you can find in Israel. And I've been there. And there he had helper, John 19:39, and there came also Nicodemus, which at the first came to Jesus by night. Now Nicodemus has accepted Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. He accepted it before the resurrection. Now, there were over 500 people, 514, over that eyewitnesses of Jesus Christ after he rose from the dead, and no one has disproved their testimony. Now, Nicodemus went through them stages that I mentioned, where sincere people will begin to quietly wonder. Sincere people will begin to personally consider the idea or topic, and sincere people will research it and accept the idea as self-evident. Now, several years ago, I was encouraged to research an idea called geocentricity. That idea states that the sun revolves around a stationary earth. It's not that the earth spins and revolves around the sun. No, this idea is geocentricity, where the earth stays stationary and the sun revolves around it. Now, I didn't really care to research the idea because I was under step one. I ignored it. Now, I didn't ridicule the idea. I just ignored it. And I think I was busy at the time building a log house. I built a log garage, this log house that I'm in, and a log cabin that we put down further down there. And so I was pretty busy. And so I didn't really feel the need to study the idea. Now, when I get 2 or 3 or 4 suggestions about a topic or an idea, then I'll take a look at it. And incredibly, a couple years back, an incredible and absurd, I thought was an absurd idea, that questioned the belief of the shape of the earth began to appear on the internet. And the belief of geocentricity automatically came along attached to the idea. And so I thought, okay, I think I'll look at that. That sounds fun, sounds entertaining, sounds like a good little hobby for the side. Now I've realized that we are 6,000 years from Adam. Now, if you don't believe in that historical account, then we're 6 billion years from the amoeba. But in these 6,000 years, the devil, Lucifer, has created multiple deceptions. He takes truth and just twists it a little bit. Now, deceptions have infiltrated every area of life, every single area of life now. Now, the funny thing is that Satan will often hide his intentions within plain sight. God does the same thing, where he'll hide the truth within plain sight. Now, you can see some of these hidden suggestions in the symbols of major corporations. It will reveal the intentions of the elite. It's almost like God makes them do it to see how we respond. Now, you'll find in governmental structures, they'll have symbols or monuments that will also advertise these deceptions in plain sight. Now, Satan focuses on 2 main areas of life. These are areas that you and I are not supposed to talk about because people get all emotional about it. And the 2 topics are religion and politics. In Matthew 4, one of the temptations, Satan said to Jesus, "Bow and worship me, and if you bow and worship me, I will give you all these world kingdoms." So there's religion and politics. Bow, worship, religion, politics, kingdoms. Now, the Vatican City is the only nation that claims both religion and politics. And within that structure, you'll find the worship of the sun, the sunburst, which is a subtle symbol of satanic worship. Now, this leads us to an idea of conspiracies. Sometimes people ask me, are you a conspiracy theorist? And I'll just kind of smile and say, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I believe conspiracies are facts. Now, conspiracy is what the talk radio don't want you to talk about. I don't know why they're afraid of it. Probably because a conspiracy has a hold on them. But a conspiracy is nothing more than 2 or more people, a secret plan by 2 or more people to do something unlawful or harmful. That's all that a conspiracy is. If you don't believe there are conspiracies, either in the local level or in the international level, you're not dealing with reality. Ezekiel 22 verse 25, Ezekiel writes about a conspiracy of her prophets. In the midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravening the prey, they have devoured souls. And then in verse 26, her priests have violated my law and have profaned mine holy things. You know, truth is often stranger than fiction. And that is, religious leaders are some of the most untrustworthy people you'll ever meet. They claim to hold a book, but they don't believe it. Okay, so you have prophets and priests, that's a religious conspiracy. And verse 27, her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey, to shed blood, to destroy souls, to get dishonest gain. So there's politics. Of course there are conspiracies within religion and politics. Two or more people having a secret plan to do something unlawful or harmful. Now, Jeremiah also wrote about this conspiracy of his day. Jeremiah 11:9. The Lord said unto me, a conspiracy is found among the men of Judah and among the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So, men, that's obviously two or more. A conspiracy may be a non-GNO, a non-government organization, or it can be a government organization. A government actually is a legal fiction in itself, but the legal fiction is used by the conspirators to control people. The typical government policy, doesn't matter what type of government you call it, operates in two basic ways. And the first way is deception, and the second is violence. If the deception doesn't work, where people voluntarily accept the deception, then they will violently be forced to accept it. Now, most laws, or what are called purported laws, are nothing more than the opinions of a few enforced by a gun. That's why Jesus called the kingdoms of this world operate by violence. The kingdom of heaven, Matthew 11, verse 12. And in Psalm 94, verse 20, the writer said that they have intend mischief. Let me get the exact thing. Psalm 94. Technically, it's a doctrinal reference to the Antichrist, but that's a whole other topic. He says, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? Okay, so that's the intention. Now, Thomas Jefferson tried to warn the American people about the possibility of public servants becoming wolves, ravening the prey. This is why they advised the people of that day, and still today, require that a public official has an oath and a bond. Why? Because we don't trust them. They are to be public servants, but they act like public taskmasters. This is why in the Bible in Daniel 7:17, Daniel portrayed kings and kingdoms to be beasts of prey, lions, leopards, bears. I don't care if you think they are Christian or not. That's the normal Bible description. Now, is that not strange? Truth is stranger than fiction. Now, we can take that statement and put it in any realm. There's an idea, a doctrine, and a deed that God hates. It's mentioned in Revelation 2:6 and 2:15. Jesus Christ mentioned it. It's called the Nicolaitans. The doctrine of Nico to conquer, laity, to conquer the laity, is when a supreme conspiratorial group who put themselves in an elite position and they lord it over the people. God hates that. Revelation 2:6. In the Catholic environment, it will be the Pope and his Jesuits who conquer the common Catholic individual. You don't understand the Bible. You have to let us teach you the Bible. In the Protestant arena, it's the Greek friars and the Protestant popes who claim they're running to the original languages. And the people don't understand it. They're no different than the Pope. In the education world, it's the liberal NEA and their clones. In the space program, it's NASA and the Freemasons. In the government agency or agenda, it's the Illuminati or a shadow government. In monetary policy, it's the Fed, a private corporation, and the international banking cartel. In the health world, medical world, it's the AMA and the pharmaceutical industries. In the news industry world, it's the national or international liberal news agencies, fake news. They try to put it off as their objective. no news organization is objective. They're all subjective. They all have some agenda, be it good, be it bad. In the movie industry, it's Hollywood and the many pedophiles in Hollywood. In the agriculture world, it's the chemical industries. In the Jewish world, it's the proponents of the Kabbalah, apostate Jews, and fake Jews. Now, these conspiracies and the deeds of the Nicolaitans have infiltrated every area of life. Every area. And that's why truth is often stranger than fiction. And the philosophy a person can adopt is this: if the plain sense makes sense, seek no other sense. Oh, that makes sense. You'll find that in Nehemiah 8, verse 8. And that's when a person gets understanding. And that's what the Bible calls inspiration. Now, there's another statement, a Murphy's Law. I like Murphy's Law. And it says, if it don't make sense, there's a buck in it. And in that only English Bible that uses the word science in 1 Timothy 6:20, that same English Bible is the only one that warns against the love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. Now, one way a person can discover truth is to question the obvious contradictions, deceptions, errors, or falsehoods. You can use your five senses to evaluate these. For example, a mechanic will search for errors, fix the error in order for the engine to run properly. Now, one may notice the closeness to the truth when the Nicolaitans bark loudly when a nerve is hit and their authority is in question. In these days, that's the fake news. Oh, they crying. Why? Someone hit a nerve. Nicodemus witnessed that with the Pharisees. Why did they react this way? It's because they were afraid in John 11 to lose their place. That's why I said earlier, it is practically impossible to get someone to understand something when their livelihood depends upon them not understanding. If you put that in the spiritual world, it is practically impossible to get someone to understand the truth of Jesus Christ when their self-righteousness depends upon them not understanding the truth of Jesus Christ. And so this might be where the power of negative thinking is beneficial. In 1 John 4, verse 6, John talked about, hereby we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. You know both of them. Both of them. And when you recognize something is obviously wrong, then you're on the path of seeking the truth. You may not know what's right, but you can know what's wrong. And that will lead you down that road of seeking the truth. Patrick Henry made one very simple statement. He made several statements, but this one I really like. He said, suspicion is a virtue, not a vice. And so that's the idea, is taking these topics and this specific topic as we go on to try to seek the truth first by looking at all the errors.